Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Candice, and today we are going to be talking about 4 things to do as a Christian before entering like the courting and dating phase, if you will. But before we get into this video, I'm going to go ahead and pray for it, because it's always a good idea. God, thank you for another day, another video, and another teaching. I ask that you would bless anyone who's under the sound of my voice right now, and that you would just really open their eyes and ears to whatever it is you want them to get out of this video, because I know you brought them here for a reason. If they're listening to me, then you brought them here. I didn't bring them here, you did, God. So I ask that you would bless them with beautiful marriages, and that they would really have the heart to do the work that needs to be done before entering into one. I ask these things in Jesus Christ's name. Okay, so when I was sitting down thinking about, for a video for this week, I had gone through some of my old journals, and I've been journaling for like the past 6 years or so now, something like that. And if you haven't journaled, side note, if you have not journaled as a Christian, I would highly recommend it. Like going through and just putting down your thoughts, writing to God, talking to Him, prayer requests, you put all those things in there. And then what's awesome is later on you can always go back and then reread those things and be like, oh yeah, I prayed for that and God answered that. Or yeah, this is what I was struggling with and now I'm on the other side of that. And it's so great how God has healed me from that, He's amazing, and having a record of it is always a nice thing. But as I was going through these things, and I was like, okay, there's a lot of things that I've healed from, a lot of things that I've worked on, just a lot of ways that God has blessed me over the years. And I've been single for a long time, but there's just a lot of work that I had to do. I mean, there were things that I had to really sit down with God and work on before God would be like, okay, now you're kind of ready for, courting or dating and stuff like that. And I was thinking about that, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna break it down into 4 things. 4 things that are important to do before you enter into like courting and dating, because let's face it, it's always better to prepare for something beforehand and like be ready for it and just on the ball, as opposed to getting into something before you're ready and then having it fall apart. Okay, so number 1 in the things to do before getting into courting and dating phase of your life is to really like sit down and figure out what it is that you want. Now, there are a lot of Christians out there who want a lot of different things, okay, like in a lot of different areas of life. Now, I think it's really important to figure out what you want is like in the big topics for sure. That way, you'll end up with somebody who's compatible with those things, and it prevents a lot of conflict. Obviously, if you're a Christian, you're going to want somebody who is chasing after God. You're going to want a spouse who has a personal relationship with God. It's probably in their Bible most days, and just has that foundation. That one is kind of an obvious one. Another one, though, is gender roles. So in Ephesians chapter 5, it kind of defines what it is to be a husband and a wife. Like, it's specific instructions, wives submitting to their husbands because the husband is the head of the home, sort of a thing, and being respectful towards them, but also commanding husbands to love their wives and cherish them, and all those sorts of things. And I think it's important to go to the Bible, figure out what God says about marriage, and then see what you want from that. Okay, so like personally, I would totally abide by biblical gender roles, and I would want a husband who wants to abide by biblical gender roles and who wants to be the leader in the home, who wants to be, the one taking charge of a lot of those sort of things and protecting and providing, in the masculinity and femininity series I'm going through different chapters in the Bible, different people, and just pulling out, the masculine traits and the feminine traits. And if you don't know what you want, biblical gender roles and stuff like that, you can go watch that video. It gives you a lot of insight into it. Those videos do. Another thing you should know, especially as a woman, is if you want to stay home and be a stay-at-home wife or a stay-at-home mom, or if you want to be working in some form or another, I think that's something to be just conscientious of and aware of where you're at with that and what your desires are with that, because, you know, the man you end up with, or the one man you end up dating or courting, you want to know if you're on the same page with them about that. So some women, again, want to stay home. Like, I personally think that my first ministry is in the home. I thrive in the home. Like, I love baking and cooking and gardening and doing all the things. And so for me personally, in a marriage, I would want to be able to stay home and do ministry through my home. And I would want a man who is out there providing, and who not just like providing out of obligation, but that's a desire of his. Like, he wants to provide financially for the home, you know. That's just what I want. But some people don't want that. Some people want more of a 50-50 sort of a thing. Some people, you know, again, whatever it is you want, just knowing it ahead of time helps avoid conflict. Kids, obviously, is a big one. If you want kids, if you don't want kids, for me, I'm like, okay, God, if you want me to have kids eventually in a marriage, great, fabulous. If you don't want me to have kids eventually in a marriage, I'm cool with that too. I leave that decision up to God personally, but everybody's got a different perspective on it. And I know that, you know, if you get into a marriage or get into a relationship really deep, like you start dating and you're having so much fun with this person, and you don't hit the big topics, you know, kind of early on in the relationship, and so you're dating and you really like this person, and you're falling in love with this person, and then you realize, oh, that person wants kids and I don't, or that person doesn't want kids and I do, you know, or you get some of these big topics, and it can be hard to deal with them once you're like farther into the dating relationship. It can be heartbreaking too for some people, you know, depending on how far in you are, and then if you realize your lifestyles aren't compatible. So this is why I'm saying to do this before you even get into dating and courting, just so you know, and you can just have it out on the table ahead of time. If you're doing any ministry, or you want a man who's doing ministry, or you want a woman who's doing some form of ministry, you know, these are things to think about ahead of time. Character traits, you know, if you want somebody who's super extroverted, or somebody who's really introverted, or someone somewhere in the middle, or you want someone who is, you know, like more outgoing and generous and giving towards other people, who is really like serving at heart, versus, or you want someone who, you know, has no problem sitting and chilling on the couch with you for a couple hours because you just want to hang out. Like, you know, just character traits, things that you would prefer, you know. These aren't like done deals of, oh, if this person is not an extrovert, I will not date them. You know, just things to think about. That would be more of the category of not deal breakers, but just, you know, preferences and things to think about. Once you have all these things in your head and you've figured out, okay, this is what I want, these are the things I'm not willing to compromise on, and these are the kind of things that are just preferences or I don't really care as much about, then you take all of those things, and number 2, you go and you pray to God about them. You pray that God will provide you with a spouse who is compatible with your lifestyle. You pray that God will, you know, send you a person who has healed from their traumas, a person, you know, who has good family ties, you know, all of the little things that are on your list, or all of the big things that are on your list. Pray to God and just talk to him about it, because, you know, prayer works miracles, guys. It really does. Like I said, with the whole journal thing, I was going back and looking through my journal, and I'm like, oh yeah, I prayed for my cats. Like, back last May, I was talking to God, and I'm like, hey, you know, if you could bring it into my life where I end up with cats again, because my old cats had passed away, I'm like, I would really love that if you could provide that and make that happen. And this December, so 6+ months later, he made it happen. Now I have 3 cats. And it was something I prayed for, and it's something he arranged, you know, like, prayer really does work, guys. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes over here. I would pray about specifics, you know, if there are very specific things that you are attracted to, or very specific things that you really would never be able to stand, you know, pray to God about those things, and about developing those things in a future spouse. And the funny thing is, as you start praying for a future spouse, a future husband, a future wife, God will use that prayer time to change you. Like, he will help you know if there's anything that's superficial on your list that you need to just get rid of. He'll let you know, if there's things on that list that you really need to dive deeper into to understand. He will change the way you see marriage. He will change the way you see a spouse, because let's face it, when we first start thinking about marriage or dating or courting, you're thinking about what you're going to get from the other person out of the relationship. It's natural. But as we mature, as we pray about these things, God flips it around and starts asking you, well, okay, what are you going to bring to this relationship? How are you going to bless your future spouse? Like, what are the skills that you have that would be beneficial to another person? What things can you learn to be beneficial to another person? What things do you need to heal from so you don't take those problems out on another person? All of that sort of stuff. He takes it and he flips it. He works on you as well as working on the other person. And even if you've never met this person, or you have and you're waiting on it to happen, or whatever the case may be, he's going to be working on them behind the scenes. And your prayers do affect that. Your prayers do really help in this way. They help him work on that person, and they help him work on you. And it's really good to be in a good space, mentally, physically, emotionally, of course, before you get into the dating phase and the courting phase, because the healthier you are, the healthier the relationship is going to be. And praying helps that. Once you've done all the praying and all the things, we move into number 3, which is to do some research, okay? Now, some of you out there have had great examples of godly marriage. Like, your parents were married for like 50 years, but grandparents married, aunts and uncles, great. Some of us, probably I would say at least the vast majority of us these days, didn't really have the greatest examples growing up. You know what I mean? Like, maybe toxic relationships, divorces, things that happened that just, it was hard for you to learn how to have a healthy relationship because you didn't see any. So, like, for me personally, I did not see a healthy, godly marriage, like, up close until I was 18 years old. I was 18 when I first realized, oh, people actually marry and get together and they actually like each other. Wait a second. They're in love with each other. I thought that only happened in movies. So it's safe to say there was a lot of catching up that I needed to do in terms of, researching what God says about marriage, researching biblical submission, because that was a hot button for me for a long time. Just researching healthy communication, how to respect your spouse, your husband, all the sorts of things. You can read books. There's books, videos, whatever form that you like the best. Personally, I'm a visual person, so I read, and I read incredibly quickly. So I've read books on marriage advice, books on healing from past traumas, books on communication, books on love languages, books on personalities and quirks and, how to handle conflict in a healthy way, stuff like that. And what's beautiful about, even if you haven't, growing up, if you did not have examples of these things, if you did not, learn these things naturally because the people around you were doing them, you can still learn them later on in life. I was an adult when I started learning these things, okay? And God will take you through it, and He will give you all the information you need to know. And there's a lot of good authors out there, Christian authors out there, who are putting out books to help other people, in marriages, in relationships, in leaning into your femininity or your masculinity, how to do all the things. And I wanted to show you guys. This is just a sample. These are the books that I have in my home that I have read. This also doesn't include, the 50 to 100 plus other books that I've gotten from the library and gone into to really learn the things that I didn't learn when I was a kid. So I think it's important, even if you have learned some of these things, picking a couple of books and brushing up on the topics couldn't hurt. I think it's a good thing to just kind of really prepare yourself before getting into the phase of courting and dating. that brings us to number 4. Number 4 is preparation. And by preparation, I mean taking yourself and thinking about, okay, well, if I'm going to get married, then what are the things I need to know? What are the things I need to learn before I get there? What are the things I need to do? And this means taking, maybe you need to learn how to cook, or learn how to clean, or learn how to manage your money and budget, or maybe, there are some random skills that you want to learn to bring into a marriage, gardening or music, or, whatever it is. I think some of the good ones to learn are how to encourage other people, how to be a support for another person, really thinking about what you're going to bring to the table to help that other person. Preparing may mean going and getting some new clothes and getting rid of frumpy ones. Preparing may mean, taking better care of yourself, eating better, exercising, it might mean getting yourself down to a healthy weight or up to a healthy weight if you're way too thin, it might mean, just going through and doing the healing process, like I said, from any traumas or any problems that you've had. It might mean, working with God through your fears about a marriage, or if your expectations are too high for a marriage, God might bring you down and give you some realities of what's going on, All of the preparation stuff is just good to do ahead of time, and God will prepare each person differently. So if you don't know what to prepare or how to prepare, take it back to God. Just talk to him and be like, hey, okay, what do I need to do before you're gonna put me into a relationship or into a marriage? And he might tell you something like, you need to get your eating habits in order, because I need you to eat healthier that way, because you are a good cook, and so I need you to eat healthier so you will be able to feed your family nutritiously through marriage and your kids or whatever else may happen. Maybe he's going to tell you to just start reading the Bible more, and to work through some issues you might have with some hot topic buttons. You might not like the word submission, you might not like the word obedience, you might not, just going back and seeing what God really says about it is always something that he might have you prepare for. What else? Just taking care of yourself, figuring out what hairstyle you like best, what kind of outfits make you feel feminine, personal hygiene, all of that, it's all in there. But the thing is, when you go through these 4 things and you work through all the stuff you need to work through, you work on all the things you need to work on, you get into that exercise routine, you start saving money instead of being in pay off your debt, instead of just spending and spending, you get all these healthy habits together. And you just become a really healthy person overall. And I mean, seriously, even if you never end up in a marriage, even if you end up single, if that's God's path for you, at least you'll be a healthy person all around, Because none of these things can hurt you or, make you worse than what you are. All of these things are just going to improve upon who you are, how you interact with other people, and maybe family relationships. If you don't end up in a romantic one, it might help with your family relationships. Learning the love languages might help you realize, oh, that's why this person gives me the weirdest gifts all the time. So that they're trying to show me love. So maybe I'll go to the store and get them a gift, to kind of reciprocate. It's just good stuff all around, guys. And ultimately, at the end of the day, God, I think it's important for us to just submit this entire area to God and be like, God, okay, what do you want from me? Do you want me married? Do you want me single? And if you want me married, I ask that you would bring the right person, and that it's obvious that this is the person, that you want me to be with. God might tell you ahead of time who the person is. He might have the person show up and you just click and you're like, oh, so this is what I've been looking for, It may be a friend that you get to know better and better, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Then I like this person. you never know. God brings about love matches in so many different ways, and your story is going to be unique to you and your future spouse. And the biggest thing is just looking forward to it, being like, okay, God, whatever it is, however it's going to happen, whatever your timing is. That's a big key one. Timing, guys. It's always better to wait on God and wait on God's timing than to just try and jump into yourself and make it happen. Because God formed you in your mother's womb, and He formed your future spouse in their mother's womb. And He knew when He formed you guys that He was going to bring you together, and that was going to be your person. So God already has it all planned out. He is in the driver's seat. He knows what He's doing. It's best for us to accept our position in the passenger seat and be like, okay, God, I'll just cruise here and wait. You drive us where we need to go. I guess that's about it. I hope this video has blessed you in some way. If it has, you can always like or comment on the video, subscribe, whatever. If you do any comments, I do hold all comments for review just so I can actually look at them and respond to them as they come in. I hope you guys have a blessed week. Bye.